Starring an ensemble cast of teenage characters, it was meant to be a lighthearted series, but the last few episodes twisted into something darker, leaving audiences confused and unsettled. Starring an ensemble cast of teenage characters, it was meant to be a lighthearted series, but the last few episodes twisted into something darker, leaving audiences confused and unsettled. Despite its cancellation years ago, the show clung to the town like an afterthought, spoken of only in hushed whispers and half-forgotten memories. Leah Barnes, a high school senior and self-professed media junkie, had always been fascinated by urban legends. Intrigued by the stories surrounding Night's Echo, she pored over old internet forums and articles, digging up clues about the unaired episodes. The more she learned, the more she felt compelled to watch what had been lost. Her friends, Zach and Emily, amused by her obsession, decided to join her in the search. One rainy Friday night, the trio gathered at Leah's house, their faces illuminated by the glow of her laptop. The ominous sound of rain against the roof complemented the eerie mood they had cultivated as they sifted through dusty links and hidden archives. And then, they found it. A pixelated link marked, "The Lost Episode." A moment of hesitation washed over them, but curiosity prevailed. They clicked. As the screen flickered to life, the familiar opening credits rolled, accompanied by a catchy jingle that contrasted sharply with the unsettling atmosphere. The episode began innocently enough, depicting the characters' typical teenage antics, crushes, cliques, and unrequited love. But as the story unfolded, unsettling themes emerged. Friends began disappearing one by one, leaving behind cryptic messages, their voices echoing eerily in the background. After a chill ran down Leah's spine, she shook off the feeling. It's just a show, she told herself. But as the plot thickened, a sense of dread hung in the air. There were dark figures lurking in the shadows of the screen, ghostly silhouettes that seemed to whisper to the characters through the static. They were familiar, yet morphed into something grotesque. Is it just me, or is this starting to feel real? Emily whispered, the color draining from her cheeks. Zach didn't respond, transfixed by the screen, his brow furrowed. It's just bad cinematography, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Suddenly, the video glitched, distorting the characters' faces into warped, horror-stricken expressions. Leah felt her heart race. The audio twisted, morphing into echoes of laughter that turned into cries for help. This isn't right, Leah said, her voice trembling. We should turn it off. Quote, but just as she reached for the mouse, the screen flashed. The characters began to turn towards the camera, their eyes wide. With fear or madness, Leah couldn't tell. They spoke in a chorus, as if pleading with the audience, help us. Quote, fingers gripping their chairs, the friends exchanged nervous glances. Fear washed over them, tightening like a vice. They were mesmerized, almost hypnotized, and a sense of foreboding filled the room. Stay with us, the screen echoed, the character's mouth moving in sync, their words carrying a chilling weight that felt surreal, unnatural. Leah felt her skin pinprick as the lights flickered and dimmed, plunging the room into darkness. Guys? Emily's voice trembled, barely audible. A surge of electricity crackled, and Leah desperately fumbled to find the light switch. Before she succeeded, the screen blazed brightly, and the room took on an eerie blue hue as figures began to emerge from the television. They whispered her name. Leah. The voices chimed in unison, sounding strangely familiar, as if they resonated from the depths of an old memory. The door swung open, and she froze. Frightened, she turned to her friends, but they were not beside her, they had vanished. Zach? Emily? She cried, panic rising in her chest. A cold draft swept through the room as Leah edged closer to the screen, her eyes wide. She could see the characters straining against invisible forces, their ethereal forms flickering and distorting. Help us. They were trapped, and she realized, with growing horror, that they might be losing their connection to the world, just like the lost episode. Fighting against the paralyzing swirl of fear, Leah made a decision. With trembling fingers, she lunged for the power button on the remote. She had to stop this, whatever it was. As she pressed it, a wave of force knocked her backward, and the screen erupted in a crackling cacophony. In an explosion of static and echoes, everything went dark. When the lights flickered back on, Leah's heart sank. She stood alone in the quiet of her living room, the television ominously glowing in the corner. The credits for Night's Echo rolled, the familiar jingle long forgotten by darkened souls. The town would not forget Night's Echo, but Leah would not speak of the episode that never aired again. In her dreams, she could still hear them, those lost voices, calling to her from the void, reminding her that sometimes what is hidden should remain buried.